call the meeting to order. And review of the minutes from the previous meeting. Do I,
Move they be approved.
okay, any changes anybody saw? No? Okay. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passed. You did.
Work session.
Okay,
wanna,
work session.
Do you want to introduce our new
Oh,
member?
yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I'd like to introduce Dr. Dalgallo
Correct.
to the board. Welcome.
Welcome.
It's great to have you. And do you want everybody to introduce themselves?
We already
We
did.
did.
Oh, okay.
We're friendly.
Okay,
All
all
right.
righty.
It's easy to
Done.
talk to.
And we even have name tag in case we remember what our names are.
Getting to that, yeah.
Get to that age.
Okay.
Okay, well, the first thing on our work session tonight is a little presentation from our liaison, Larry Valentine, regarding wastewater flows and accessory apartments and how they all tie into the comprehensive wastewater management plan.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's nice to see a full board. It makes quorums a little easier. I will note that seeing it on conservation, it also makes the meetings go longer, because you have more people that want to talk. But thank you very much. Just to be upfront to it, the reason I'm talking to you tonight is interest in affordable housing. And it's not one of these things that hit me on the head, but it has occurred to me that we have two goals in town that are in some ways oppose each other. One is to increase affordable housing for all the reasons we all know about, and the other goal is protect our water. That we're spending big money on sewering and wastewater and so on. And what I'm looking for is, and the reason I want to talk is to look on some ways we can maybe move forward and accomplish both of those goals. And you know, we live in a time and in a state which is highly regulated. And this is not a simple process. To make some progress going forward, we have to involve the planning board because they're involved with zoning. You folks on Board of Health because you're involved with sewering and nitrogen mitigation. And then it also has to go through the Board of Selectmen because currently we're the sewer commissioners. And so I made a bit of a pitch on this subject to the planning board at our Board of Selectmen's meeting a week ago. And I'd like to just walk you through some things tonight. I'm going to keep it short. I gave you some, because this is an introductory and I don't want to spend a lot of time as being one of, I think, making of other discussions going forward. But let me just review some issues that we have and some items going forward and some other towns have done. You know, first off, we right now restrict, I'm going to talk about accessory apartments. That's an easy way to get into this. And right now, you know, the growth, the expansion of accessory apartments are limited to some extent by zoning. They're reviewing that aspect by our Title V regulations. And I would suggest that with the sewering, if we look at Pleasant Bay at the moment, there's some options of how we can move ahead within our wastewater plan with Chatham and make that happen. Let me just, and I'm just going to read some things to you. I reached out to the Cape Cod Commission and DEP and what we could do to increase the ability to, say, add a bedroom for accessory apartment, a bedroom and a bathroom above what our Title V regulations are now. And what I got back from them is, and I'll just quote here from this letter, both Commission and DEP have agreed that the flow neutral requirements, and let me explain that. Part of our land control policy is that we cannot increase the amount of nitrogen going into our embayment above what's in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. That's different than what our current regulation is on Title V per se. And so, for instance, in the Pleasant Bay watershed that we're now sewering, our current nitrogen, our current flow going to Chatham is around 209,000 gallons per day. Our CWMP plan says that our growth can possibly go up to about 300 gallons per day, 300,000 gallons per day. Full neutral relates not to 209, but to the 300,000. It's a build-out plan. And that's critical to mention because we have some room to grow and add uses, accessory apartments, for instance, and not be in violation of what our agreement is with the DEP, EPA, High Commission, all the regulatory bodies that are watching us. And that gives us some freedom. But we have to be careful with that because people are always afraid that we're going to grow too much. And that's why we're highly regulated. And each of these have to be approved by the zoning, by you folks, and then by the commissioners. But to complete that statement, they're encouraging, the regulatory bodies are encouraging flexibility. And let me just read another sentence. By their nature, accessory housing units will add a limited amount of flow. Although I understand that these flows will add up in the aggregate, in most cases, the primary residence may give up one bedroom to create the accessory apartment. In other cases, the extra bedroom capacity may fit within the flow neutral future plan. And so it's up to you people, but there is a way to make that happen and allow people to use, to expand and add and increase our affordable housing stock.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Once the dwelling is connected to the sewer, we're no longer in control of anything,
No, but
right?
that's right, because then it goes back to the, as I said, the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
and their sewer regulation. And I know that today, actually, that in 2016, the Board of Selectmen did draft a sewer regulation policy, but it wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't passed in the town meeting, so it's a draft at this point. I'm sure we'll come back to that. But we're not, as a board, and I'm not speaking for the board, by the way. Let me make that very clear. I'll get in big trouble if anyone suggests I'm speaking for the board. But in saying that, the board will not take up anything per se until it's been reviewed by the planning board and by you folks. Because we don't want to go out on ourselves without input from what your committees are doing. Cynthia?
My question, I got two quick questions. One of them is the 2,900 that you talked about, is that the maximum amount that would be used in the summer months? Or is that been averaged over the year, or is that like now when there's less renters?
I think that's averaged over the year, but I'd have to double check that.
And then my other question to you is, if this passes, who's gonna monitor this to see, which department monitors that? The water department to see the impact of this?
Well, the agreement we have with Chatham, right, our IMA with Chatham is that it's Harwich's responsibility to monitor, but we'll have
Okay.
flow gauges going into the plant of the gallons per day. And so that we monitor on a real-time basis that we don't exceed that capacity. And that's our responsibility to do that going forward. And I don't know, we're talking not a heterogeneous mixture. I'm not sure how that gauge works, but I understand they could do that. And that's built into our agreement.
So if it becomes over the 3,000?
Over the 300,000?
300,000, that way we then would take action to maybe limit additional
We're
accessories?
Well, you have to.
I'm probably getting ahead of the gun, so if you
No,
want to wait.
no, that's
till then-
okay. Basically what we do is make a judgment each time there's a new increase coming into this to add on that's not going to get close to 300,000. I think, and I have to go back, you're testing my memory now. I think the agreement itself says that when we get within some value of 300,000, we have to notify Chatham and let them know what our action is to assure that we're not going to exceed that.
Okay.
So there's a safety
Good.
clause
Yeah.
built into that to protect that maximum load.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I don't know. I have to go back and look at what that number is. So that's that part on the, and this is vital to us, by the way, the flow neutral aspect, not only to protect our embayments, but that's one of our criteria for the state revolving fund to hopefully get 0% funding. And so there's a financial reward for us of being careful as well, which we're watching. You know, there are 5 different criteria, so we're paying attention to that. What I'd like to do, because I don't want to, as I said this at the start, what I'd like to is just go through what a couple of our neighboring towns have done to try to move forward in this process. And I pulled up and, Megan, did you circulate what I gave you or decide not to?
I did.
Okay. I couldn't, I talked to Megan, I wasn't sure whether it was better to give you ahead of time and confuse you or, but Megan made the right decision that you're not that easily confused, so. But what Chatham has done, and I'll just quote there, consistent with the Board of Health interim nitrogen loading regulation in 2006, they've allowed with the use, otherwise allowed with use of nitrogen-reducing innovation alternative technology septic system, you can add 1 bedroom equivalent of your normal guideline of 110 gallons per day for single-family properties connected to or scheduled to be connected to the sewer within 2 years. So they've really allowed some benefit. If you're going to be hooked to the sewer, you're allowed to have some growth. And just as a sidelight, this came to me from one of my neighbors that she's moving down to care for her mother. And she's also put a new septic system in about 3 years ago. You're going to hear this. But her position was, okay, you know, that's life. She knows she has to be connected. But it sure be great if she got some benefit of that. And for her, her benefit would be to add a bedroom in the basement so that for her mother, because she's moved down to care for her, that'd be a benefit. Well, this is a way to do that and put an apartment, accessory apartment for that, and stay within our neutral flow guidelines if we were to adopt something like this. They also later on in the Board of Health regulation, which the zoning board refers to, exempts some of the zoning guidelines if the properties are connected to the sewer. So they've handled that aspect in both the zoning and the Board of Health regulations. Falmouth, and I'll just quote, they also have tried to cover this, and I'll just read this very quickly. Whether allowed is a matter of right or by spatial permit, accessory apartments located on lots subject to the provisions of the Water Resource Protective or Coastal Pond Overlay Districts. The total number of bedrooms shall not exceed 1 per 10,000 square feet of lot area unless the principal dwelling and accessory apartment are connected to the municipal sewer system or to an on-site system with enhanced nitrogen removal. So they've also allowed a way out. It was carefully reviewed if we're not, again, I keep saying that, it's going to be reviewed because we don't want runaway growth. We want to have an opportunity for increased housing where it's appropriate. We just voted on a couple weeks ago a draft land use control policy, which addresses the how we can protect our neutral flow regulation. And this is included in your packet. It's also one of the requirements, as I mentioned, for our state revolving fund approval. But this too allows us to make some transfer of uses of nitrogen use to allow expansions. It it's very carefully stated that the Board of Selectmen as water commissioners can allow that to happen within a watershed. If it goes, there is some option to do it between what they call service areas, but that actually gets very involved. It has to go back to town meeting. So it's not easy for us to make these exemptions, but there are mechanisms to do so. I don't, Megan, I think, want to go into a lot more than that. What I'm asking for you as a board is to review these and have your own discussion on what you think is an option of helping us out, moving forward that you're comfortable with, so that we can, if not encourage affordable housing, at least not conflict with our other town goals of affordable housing and allow growth where necessary. And I'd be happy to come back and talk to you on that. Because at some point, as Pam, you mentioned, it goes to the Board of Selectmen as a policy. But it has to come, it's never in our benefit to act as a board without the input from our responsible committees. But we try to do that, it comes back and it kicks us in the rear.
Yes,
So, are you looking, or is the town looking for guidance on areas of town that aren't going to be sewered to be able to put on an accessory?
Right now, I'm concentrating on the parts that are going to be sewered,
Going to be sewered.
because otherwise, it's another issue, but I don't know, I can't address I don't think it's proper to address everything at one time.
I only ask because if they're going to be sewered, there wouldn't be a reason for the Board of Health to deny an additional bedroom.
Okay,
So,
but, and that's good. I think you have to somehow formalize that.
formalize that, okay,
And so it takes place, and
okay.
how you do that, because otherwise it'll only be confusion. That's a good question, because people may read into that somehow we're going to expand it to others, and that, I don't want to go there.
Okay,
We have other issues.
yeah, the regulations would not allow it, the town regulations would not allow it.
Right.
But the Board of Health Title V local regulations
Would not have,
wouldn't have an impact.
right. And I don't want to go there. I want to go to the sewer as we expand over the years. We're doing Pleasant Bay. It looks like we're likely in, not next year, but in the next 5-10 years, to address some sewering along the 28 corridor in West Harwich. That's different. That's in discussion now, because our CW, our comprehensive waste management plan, would have our next phase be northern part of Pleasant Bay. But because of our, discussions with Dennis and Yarmouth on the regional sewer plant, that will allow us, if we all agree, to possibly go there next, which would be, I'm going to say obvious. Nothing's obvious. But some possible benefits of providing sewering along the Route 28 corridor, which people are very interested in. And that will then open up some possibly same issue. Could we do some accessory and some more affordable housing along that corridor?
Yeah.
But I don't want, that's a good question. I don't want to get beyond the
Okay.
sewering.
And not to expand upon that, but do you feel that there are going to be demands put on by people that want to have restaurants and so forth in that area, or the Pleasant Bay area, as, competing for that sewerage gallonage?
I do, and that's a good question, because I keep repeating myself, but we have the net flow requirement. And so if you take that target of 300,000 in Pleasant Bay, the truth is, if to the extent that you can, use some of that to increase accessory apartments, that would take away some possible flow for commercial use. And so it's not, there's always going to be some judgment. Now, I don't know how many accessory apartments your guys, could be 1 or 2, it could be 10, 12, could be more. I'm not sure what the impact is, but that will have to be a discussion, sure.
So I have a question for you. the goals here to have more affordable housing, bingo, great. The fact that we're already very conscious of the nitrogen, people are wanting to be on top of that and have been on.
Right.
But who do you, if this applies, who would be the opposition to this, to have the accessory housing? Are there any groups that have stepped forward to
Let me,
voice their concern?
let me say that there's always concern. We've heard this in East Harwich when we had the discussion about the village center. There's always concern that it will get beyond our control, and there'll be an explosion of growth. And you know and you know the arguments as well as I do. First time it comes up, there'll be too much traffic, you know, so on and so forth. And sometimes, quite frankly, without even exploring what the details are. But there's real concern, and that's why I've emphasized that this would have to be a process, and Pam, you say it'd have to be back to our sewer regulations, and that is not controlled. That there's always discussion where we go. And that's one of the reasons that I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but the 208 plan that we're following has, and the SRF funding has been adamant that we submit to net neutral sewer flow, so that we're saying that's in Pleasant Bay, the $300,000 is a cap, and part of it's to avoid what some of these concerns are, that we're going to get uncontrolled growth. Times change. Some of it, there's always a fear that we're going to get a slew of box stores in East Harwich. Well, people aren't putting box stores in anymore. Can't keep up with Amazon. But part of the benefit of the discussion that you end up doing in your discussions, the zoning board and board, is that we have this open discussion so people understand where we're going and what the control is.
Yeah.
that
no one's suggesting that all of a sudden we put in, a bunch of high-rise apartments next to the Stop and Shop. It's not going to happen. Can't happen with these. But there will be opposition.
Did you say can or can't?
Can.
Can happen.
What, apartment store?
Yeah.
No, it cannot. Not in Keep It All with our sewer. We can't have no ability to do that. There's a whole bunch of things too, but I'm just addressing the nitrogen load. There's no way that you could do that within our current regulations. And in our CWMP, DEP, this is within that. This is within that cap. We're talking little things.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Thank you.
So I think, Megan, to get to your point, I think my action I'm hoping for is that you continue this discussion, and if your comment is at least formalize it so people understand what's going on,
Okay.
and then that allows the zoning, if they have to change their rules too. They can do like Chatham and Harwich and Falmouth has done. They can reference the Board of Health statement to support their position that you can add accessory apartments, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it kind of leaves them out there as, a question mark.
Okay.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Ron, I
Thank
put you
you.
to sleep the first meeting, right?
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Just report to Don that I didn't do too bad.
You did great,
No.
and I'm not going to report to him.
We have a few minutes before the 7 o'clock hearing. There's another discussion on the agenda to discuss connection extension requests. So in about 2 years from now, we'll think about sending out our first order to connect to the sewer system. And hopefully it will be a 2-year connection time frame, but right now, the way the regulations read, it's 1 year from the time you're ordered to connect, that your connection is mandatory. So in 2 years, when this first round of connection orders goes out, we may get a request to appeal the 1 year time frame and request an extension. We talked the last few months about what kind of eligibility criteria you might want to look at for eligibility. Is it the age of the system? Is it the financial needs? So the site summary that I gave you for this just has a few bullet points of some things that I came up with that you might want to consider. So I thought you should read them over, nix some of them, add some of them, and if there's something that you want me to further look into as far as how other departments consider things to be eligible for certain abatements, tax abatements, or what a low-income range looks like for affordable housing. Do you want to formalize a list? I think you should have some kind of criteria so people know whether or not they should even attempt to apply for an extension. Say, for instance, you have a 35, 40-year-old septic system and they just want an extension because they feel it's their right, they can afford it. Should they have to check a box to be able to even apply for an extension? Otherwise, everyone's going to be applying for an extension. So I think there needs to be
Did everybody get a chance
something.
to read this over?
Yeah, I like number 3 the best, because I can conceive of somebody just putting in a Title V and then being hit with a sewer assessment. That would be, in my opinion, would be a very important criterion for allowing an extension. It's almost a no-brainer, in fact. But the others, obviously, it can all be argued on, especially the income issue, because the septic systems have already, the sewer systems have already been given, notice to the public that there are ways of ameliorating the cost of conversion.
And when is your target, what is your timeline that the letter would go out? You said in the next year or?
2 years. So the letters can go out as soon as the Chatham treatment plant's able to receive flow from
Oh.
our sewer lines. It's going to take about 2 years for that all to be constructed. So the time target is about June of 2021. So that's 2.5 years before the first letter goes out.
Oh, okay, I thought you said this year. The letter was going out.
No,
Really?
no,
Okay,
we have
no,
a couple,
okay,
we have a
yeah.
couple years to discuss this, but
Oh, good.
people are asking about it now.
Yeah,
And things move slowly, so.
that's good, because with all the retirees down here, I think fixed income, in other words, I think this is a good, people can really be thinking this through seriously, how they're gonna do this.
Yes, and the town has sent out letters to all property owners in Phase 2 that this is happening, and they're able to ask questions about the financing, and we're always talking about how people can pay for this as far as loans and how the town can help.
Would the most popular, I'm guessing, is going to be the Barnstable County loan program?
It is,
Isn't that a
yeah.
direct default, because you don't have to apply, you're automatically accepted regardless of your.
There is an application, I think they have a 99% approval rate, and it's a 24-hour turnaround, so you apply, you know the next day if you were approved or not.
Right,
It is applicable to sewer connections too, not just Title V's.
yeah.
And
So I think that there's just going to be, they should
yeah.
look at their amount of money they have to loan, because I think that's going to, that might be something that we could get in front of. They might run out of money.
I don't think that's a possibility. I think they have
They're well funded.
That's
well
gonna be their-
funded.
They're anticipating a lot of business.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think everybody
Yeah.
would do that rather
Yeah.
than shell out $6,000
Yeah.
if you're on a budget.
But they have quite a large bank account for this.
That's good to hear.
And it's state-funded as well, so it's
I think there
guaranteed
needs to
money.
be a way of recognizing those that may be shut-ins or blind and don't look at letters, maybe through the Council on Aging or the town nurse, high-risk people who are in the zone 2 that probably would never answer.
Great
Or
point.
get mail, you know? A lot
Great
of people
point,
don't even-
yeah.
Read mail.
Don't even read mail.
True,
Um,
that's a good point.
And the other question, I think I asked this a couple of meetings ago, with all this system going into place and all this extra paperwork and monitoring, et cetera, is the Board of Health or the other committees in town gonna have the ability to add staff if that's what's needed? Is that being worked out proactively so that, rather than getting behind on review of the information, or you guys have really done a lot already with the forms and everything, but is there,
I've talked to Chris about it, and he and I both agree we can handle the workload for the next few years, but once the connections start, things might change. But also, there may be a sewer department then. The long-term goal is to have a sewer department, and Dan Pelletier is the sewer superintendent right now. So long-term,
Would that be in-house here or in the water department?
I
In
think
the
we
water.
need to end, it's after 7.
yeah, they're just getting settled, so we can,
Okay.
we can probably finish this discussion. a
Because
little
there might be some people incapable of doing the paperwork, incapable of hiring, getting the
Yeah.
bids,
Yep.
and need to be handheld through the whole thing.
It's true. It's true. Right now, that's our department, or the Barnstable County Loan Program does that. They walk people, they do a lot of hand-holding
Yeah.
to make sure people understand the terms of the loan, and
Is there's gonna be a mechanism set up where we send out the, you've gotta do it notice, and we get some feedback that they are doing it, so we'll know who's not doing it?
we won't know who's not doing it until the time frame has come up and we,
That's
Would
right.
we, well, right, once we're in it.
yes,
That's when we'll know, because
yes,
we'll have the installer permits to
right. We
watch
have
against
started a
the-
database already of all the properties and put columns in place as far as when the date the letter was sent out, the date the connection is supposed to be made by,
Yeah,
if a
That's why I think
permit's
the
been
Council on Aging
requested.
and the town nurse can help
right. we'll have-
identify those
Mm.
people that
Potential
are on
people.
there.
sounds like a really good
Not all of them,
graduate,
I'm sure.
graduate student program for a lot of these phases, like working as a liaison or having some really versatile grad students work as a liaison between Council on Aging and
Yeah.
the town, et cetera, or even drafting some of these tools, or even starting to put some of the information in the database to help us through some of these phases. They'd be thrilled to get a progressive project like this, and would be thrilled to get the extra manpower until we have a better handle on how that's gonna be managed.
Good
Larry, what's the
point.
number of total connections for the first phase? Do you know?
600 plus.
So it's pretty manageable. I mean, it's not like, it's not 6,000.
I'm glad you say that.
600, you can count to 600 pretty
Mhm.
quick.
It's still gonna be a fair amount of work.
And it's going to be over a few years' time.
Years.
Right,
Yeah.
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 I mean, as Megan says, you know, the plan right now, or continue to be, is that the Board of Selectmen is acting sewer commissioners. Our charge is to implement the CWMP and get pipes in the ground. Once that's done, and then we're handing it off to the water, so at that point, it'll be the Water and Sewer Commission. And the Board of Selectmen will continue to worry about getting it done. But that will help your workload, because then they'll have a specific person responsible for being sure that the flows and everything is happening, as
Mm.
you said, so.
Right, permit review and inspections would be
We do have
taken
a
over.
plan, it's just moving forward.
It's a way,
Yeah.
it's a ways away,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that blink an eye and it'll be here.
Pre-planning pays premiums.
Yes. Okay, so I'll, we'll bring this up again at the next meeting then, so we can just keep talking about it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you, Larry.
It's past 7 o'clock, so we can put our discussion on the reconsideration requests at the end of the new business and move on to old unfinished business. So we have a hearing for, it's a continued hearing for Perks, Taylor, and Sarah Powell of 554 Route 28. This is a request to amend the restrictions on the current food service permit and allow an expansion of space into the existing retail area of the building. The proposal includes a request for indoor space and patron use of a restroom to be installed.
Okay, Board of Health opens the hearing.
Good evening. I'm Bill Riley. I'm an attorney in Chatham. I represent Taylor Powell, who's here with me tonight. And, we're in a difficult situation and trying to find ways to get relief. I thought Megan's report to you today sort of pointed a way in which there may be some relief, and so we'd like to talk about that if that's possible. Specifically, Megan talked about the possibility of adding IA as providing some relief. And I just, there are a lot of different IA systems, and I just didn't know if you had a particular system in mind when you made that recommendation or not.
There aren't any particular that I was thinking of. There's several that are allowed for general use approval through Mass DEP. So
Right.
something that would knock down BOD and nitrogen. So the engineer would recommend what would work for your flow.
Right, so I mean, there's one of the new systems called Perk-Right, which is essentially a drip irrigation system. And I thought that might be helpful because I think we could provide greater leach capacity because of that as well. Are you familiar with that system at all?
I am. That's a leaching facility. It's not a nitrogen reduction system, but it is approved for general use. I'm not sure if there's square footage here. You need a minimum of 400 square feet for that system. But again, your engineer would be able to help you with that.
Well, of course, the standard nitrogen removing systems, I think we have room to modify the existing septic tanks to handle those. What kind of relief would you envision that would provide us?
Well, did you want to present what you're here for first, or did you want to just go to my report?
Well, what we're here for is that the existing building has room in the used to be retail space in the front of the building, and Taylor would like to be able to take advantage of that space on days of inclement weather. And in my conversation with Megan and in a report to you, she points out that because typically in inclement weather there wouldn't be any water usage, the fact that there would be water usage on an inclement day is going to effectively increase the amount of water going into the ground there. So candidly, I hadn't thought about that until I saw it in Megan's report, but I can appreciate that. And so, the idea of adding IA is a pretty modest change from our perspective, depending on, what kind of relief that would grant us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the proposal for the front of the building is that there would be a bar, but there wouldn't be any seats. That's so that the idea would be we don't want to have something that might be used for customers on a non-inclement day. So we thought the lack of seats would allow you to give us some relief in terms of the amount of space we have available to serve our customers.
Could I make a point? It almost works in the opposite direction. There's no seats, it's a big open bar room. You'd have an unlimited cap on the number of patrons there.
Especially in inclement weather.
It's not unlimited. I disagree with that there's limits with space and.
Well, not unlimited, but I mean,
Right.
then it falls under what's the capacity for the room.
Well, we have,
and so
well,
forth.
right now we have 33,
Right now you have no public bathroom, right? We're on the same page there?
that's correct.
Okay. And we've gone from a dress shop to serving coffee with no public bathroom. From coffee to a full bar in a restaurant with no public bathroom. Right?
I don't know if I'd call it a restaurant, but they do serve some food, that's correct.
There's food, there's service, there's alcohol served, there's seating, there's umbrellas. It's a nice place. But it's all done with no public bathroom at this point.
At this point, and
But that is because of the septic system that is sized for the building.
actually, it's not. I mean, there is a bathroom there. The problem is, to get access to the bathroom, you have to go through the kitchen. That's why the public can't go through there.
That's the issue with that. Originally, when I came here in May, and I met with Megan several times prior to that, understanding the flow of the system. She's an expert, I'm not. But by acquiring the front retail space, that would alleviate an extra 102 gallons per day, is what that space is allocated for, which equates to 5 seats. So naturally, when I come in October, I want to gain the 5 seats. I mean, this is my livelihood. I'm trying to improve the town. I'm trying to improve the base of the town. It's a seasonal business. Every minute counts. And having something written in my permit saying weather dependent only is not something that I don't think anybody wants on their permit. Hence this inside space. The retail space out of business. I can't think of opening another retail space there because I lost a ton of money by taking it over. And it's hard on me to actually take money, rent money from somebody to go in there, and they're just going to go out of business anyway, because who runs a retail space successfully just for a season? So on my new plan now, what I thought, since the 5, you didn't want me to add anything to the septic system, what I thought was something that we could agree on or hopefully work with, but if we remove the 5 seats that we should be allowed by the 102 gallons extra from that room, and utilize the room. If it rains every day this summer, I don't have a business. So it's just an extra space that attached to our building, which is much like you have an extra room already built in your house. And you know what, you guys want to use it. I'm in the business point of view, I have the extra room, it's there. If there's extra flow that's allowed, I want to absorb that flow. I don't plan on adding any more seating to our system whatsoever.
But you're not addressing that you're already overflow of what the per day, gallons per day for the septic system presently have.
I wasn't prepared to address that in the sense that had I known it would be taken into account, I would have been more frugal with my water usage. We have a watering system for our garden that's turned on manually every day and just pumps water into the ground. So those numbers, I would have never watered the garden.
Does that go through,
It's an irrigation system. We won the
Irrigation is
garden
part
award in
of the
2012 for
watering
having the nicest
system.
garden in
Okay.
Harwich Board. I'm proud of it, so I want to make sure those hydrangeas are blooming. So that's why I turned the water on. I never thought that big deal. Turn the water on, we're going to take a shower and just let it run. We serve coffee, we use the water to produce a good that goes out the door, and it's someone else's septic problem, not ours. And that could be hundreds of gallons.
Yeah, another element of that is I think Megan was using 100 days of operation, which is a number that Taylor gave to her, but in reality, it's closer to 150 days. So if you,
154.
so if you do the math, it brings the gallons per day down, so that it's actually quite close to the design flow of the system.
That you're open,
That we're using water through that system, which is what we're here to talk about.
that the restaurant is open?
We open Memorial Day weekend, and we close Columbus Day, on Monday, Columbus Day.
But you've indicated that you're only open on the weekends in May and most of June
Correct.
and September
Correct,
and October.
correct.
So the days that you're actually operating is closer to 100.
Somewhere plus or minus, I mean, it depends. If we have a bad weather day, it could be less. Nice weather, it could be more. You know, I shouldn't be regulated on the days I can open or not, but hopefully this nice weather, I gotta pray for that. And that system's designed for 482 gallons a day per day. And you said I could have a restaurant there all year long. So if I had a restaurant there all year long at 482 gallons, 13 seats. So if, let's say I had 13 seats that could operate every day of the year, that would be 175,930 gallons that system, without impeding on the system, would be allowable for what it's designed for. And we're nowhere near the 175. We're not even at half of that. There is, of course, there's a spike in the summer. If you look at everybody's system, there's probably a spike in the summer.
One thing I see about this whole thing, the real seating issue here is the toilet seat. The rest of the seating is, flows from that, if you pardon the terrible pun. But the fact is that if you were to have a public toilet in your front room, that would be the only public toilet on the entire south side of Bank Street. It would. There are no others.
For patrons only, not a public toilet.
Well, if you're going to open a toilet in a restaurant, or even a 5-seat restaurant, people are going to use it. And every Wednesday, there might be 200-300 people milling around in that area. And believe me, the news is going to get out. There's a toilet in there. And people are going to come in and use it, even if they're not patrons.
Okay, I think we're getting a little sidetracked.
I thought that's what we were talking about, was
If
the
I
toilet.
could clarify, the reason why the toilet or the bathroom at Perks right now is not allowed
Yeah,
to be used by the public is because it's only accessible through the kitchen.
yeah, I understand, but he
patrons would
wants
have
to
to
make
go
it
through.
public,
It's
right?
very
That's
easy
right.
to walk
Yeah.
in, though.
Right.
And I'm saying that if you make it public, your
People are-
water flow is gonna go way up.
That's a very good point. However, he can modify the inside of his restaurant to make his bathroom accessible to the public without your permission. So he can
Oh,
add
yeah.
on a bathroom, whether or not he has this or not. I do
I
want
thought
you to
that
know
would,
that.
that would violate the water flow regulation.
No, the reason why that restriction is on his license is because patrons would have to move through the kitchen to get to it. If it wasn't that way, patrons would be able to use it. They're
So
allowed to have a
Making
bathroom.
it a public bathroom does not in any way affect our decision?
It's a separate decision.
But-
So his if he were to come before you with just an application to add a bathroom and not
Yeah,
this extra space,
yeah.
it would be a good discussion to have, because yes, the water usage is going to increase by all means. However, it's not a violation of Title V, the septic regulation, or the food code regulation. It's only a violation to his current permit restriction, which was only placed on it because you had to go through the kitchen,
Oh, okay, thank you.
okay?
Yeah, that was my question, was being concerned about, the bathroom just being, I thought the new plan, and maybe I'm wrong here, it was, we were adding a bathroom, and the other thing is that I think you told us at the last hearing that there's no bathroom on the second floor where you and your wife live over those, whatever it is, 6 months. And so, I think the total package confused me, so I wanted to ask those questions.
Yes, there is a full bathroom upstairs in the
Oh, there
apartment.
is, oh,
Yep.
Correct. There's two
Um,
downstairs, and we weren't looking to, just to clarify, to add any bathroom, we were actually just gonna move it. So we're not gonna increase anything there either.
Right.
okay.
So there already is another bathroom, it's just not accessible. So this proposal is to add that bathroom and expand into the inside space, which is what causes the increase in water usage.
So am I correct that moving people indoors is not the issue so much as how much water they use? Is that what, is that correct?
When you move people indoors, when they weren't allowed to go indoors before, they would go elsewhere and wouldn't use any water
Yeah.
because they weren't there. But now, if they're moving from outside to inside, now they're there, he's more people, more water.
And the assumption is that only the people who are indoors would use that.
No, I think the point is that we're really talking about using the indoor space on rainy days.
Yeah.
And so right now, on a rainy day, there is no water usage on the property, aside from selling coffee.
Well, the
So-
water use is because the toilet is prohibited to the public.
No, it had nothing to do with the toilet. The reality is that, so that instead of having little or no water use on a rainy day, if we have the space in the front, we would have more patrons and there'd be more water use on a rainy day than there had been in the past. That's Megan's concern. I understand it. And so I guess I might have started out incorrectly, but the idea was to discuss, in her report to you, she made several suggestions of things that if we did those, that she might be able to be in favor of our request. And so I sort of started out saying, so if we add IA, is that going to enable us to use, in Megan's opinion, use the front of the building without additional harm to the system? So that was sort of where we are, I thought, anyway.
I think despite the weather, like my husband and I pretty much go there every Wednesday during the stroll,
Thank you.
because it's great. But I'll tell you, if I knew there was a bathroom in there and it was good weather, I would be going in that front room. And I've gone through the one in the kitchen and no one's ever stopped me, so I really didn't know that it's not next to the stove or anything, so you can kind of get in there. But I just think I'm glad to hear that you are modifying the inside to accommodate people who need to use the facility, because, if you're enjoying yourself and you're dancing and having a glass of wine or a beer, it's not long before you need to have facilities, and running across the street to the one and only place that lets you in, which is whatever they call it, the municipal building, isn't a great solution for town anyway.
Well, I think
I think you're gonna have more requests than you expect to use the facility.
we would also use a low-flow toilet system too, so you don't use the same amount of water. Be very minimal water flow. So, but the real question for us and for Megan, I thought was, if we add IA to the system, is that sufficient, in your opinion, to give us some relief?
Well, if I could just read my report.
I didn't get the back of it.
Oh, you didn't get the second, well, that's why you're all looking at me like
Yeah.
that. So I'll read the second page
anybody
of my
get
report.
Cliffhanger. No, just
Oh, okay.
the site report.
We need the cliff notes.
Go ahead.
No, not at this point.
We got the first page.
You got the first page, okay. So with the 220 gallons a day upstairs for the apartment, the rest of the property, the first floor is left with 262 gallons a day, Title V. That equates to 13 fast food seats for the property. Right now, there's 33 outside.
Convenience seats.
Convenient seats, meaning table service is not permitted. in another way to try to limit water usage. People won't stick around quite as long to use the facilities if they're not waited on at the table. So 13 seats for the whole facility is what Title V would allow, and that would be year-round use. But because in 2012 and 16, there were some changes to the site, an outdoor bar was added. You as a board allowed 33 seats outside. And in giving those 33 seats, the conditions were mandatory shut-off for 6 months out of the year, or more, those dates are set. Paper restriction, outdoor, weather-dependent, bistro style, it was a requirement. And that was, again, because of the 33 seats that are allowed on site, is more than double what Title V allows. So it was a compromise on the part of the board to allow 33 seats outside rather than, at the time it was 8 because they had the retail space. So it was quite a compromise on the board's part to allow the 33 outside. Water use records for the last 3 years did average about 850 gallons per day. That is actual per day water usage. So it's not, obviously when they weren't open it was 0, but when they were open for those 100 and something days, water usage was high. What Attorney Riley is talking about is my recommendation on the last page, which you didn't get, unfortunately. Allowing the expansion of use with what's there now would create an environmental and possibly public health nuisance. I would recommend consideration of this request if the applicant were to eliminate plumbing fixtures from the second-story apartment, making it storage, integrating alternative technology into the septic system, installing a composting toilet in the public patron use, remaining seasonal with the paper restriction, and getting the septic system inspected to make sure that it's properly functioning now. That does not include, that's what he's, based on what he's asking for now, which is an open room with no seats. The request coming today is news to me as far as making it weather dependent. So that request is different than what was asked for. So it's something different to consider, whether these conditions or these different recommendations would be favorable to have. We have offset seating plans now for other restaurants that have outdoor seats in the summer, bring them in the winter to make larger restaurant. Something to consider would be on rainy days, there's no outdoor seating and it's only indoor seating. That would be more of a give and take as far as a compromise goes to you. The plan presented to you tonight, there's no compromise as far as giving anything up.
Has he given up the apartment, the
No.
220? No. Okay, so we're still at 262, which equals 13 seats.
Yes,
They have 33 seats,
yes,
and they want an indoor space.
yes.
Is the
Okay.
bar gonna have to move inside
So
too?
nothing they proposed has significantly changed since we first met in October, other than the
Right.
IO coming up. But the IO doesn't bump that 262
It does
1
not.
gallon. Okay, got
It
it.
makes it a little bit more environmentally friendly, but it
It's an
does not
effort.
change,
It's
does
been-
not change the flow.
Yeah,
I would be in favor of, well, especially the composting toilet. I think that makes all the difference in the world. The other thing I would suggest is that we limit the use of the toilet to patrons only.
Well, they've already said that.
Yeah, but how are you gonna enforce it?
They gotta have a receipt. They gotta come in and
I
buy
mean,
something.
somebody gonna stand in front of the toilet and
No.
check
You
receipts,
know,
or how does it
No.
work?
We'll have a
It's-
sign and,
it's-
make sure
Maybe do a
that.
key thing, where they have to
Well,
have a
it's-
key to get in.
A lot of restaurants operate, you know, they're restrooms for patrons only. Every now and then, I suppose somebody sneaks in, but basically, you know, you have staff there, and the staff is not gonna watch somebody walk in and just walk in and use the toilet, so.
I like the key idea.
You have to,
Well-
even across the street, in back of those
Yeah.
shops, you have to get a key from the
Yeah.
shop.
Yeah, I don't know how practical that is.
Well, it's very practical.
It's better than having the universe walk in there on Wednesday.
Well, that's true.
Bartender just has a key, and people ask for it.
And is the
show
bar
them the receipt.
gonna be moved inside on the inclement weather, so that you're really not gonna have the room
No.
as big as you think it is?
I mean, in the perfect world, ideally, I wanna work with you guys as best I can, and I wanna make compromises, but to say to shut down part of my business and just now I move it here, and I can only do it on this day or that, I mean, that's hard for me to do, because is it raining today? Or I think it's raining, I got rained on, someone might disagree to that, or is it foggy, and now they don't wanna be outside because it's foggy's rain, you know, I just want, on limited hours, not as many hours I'm currently open, I wanted to utilize this room. I thought the compromise that was fair for the request was to not ask for the 5 seats that should be under the extra 102 gallons, just to absorb those 102 gallons into our permit as it is, have standing room only, have limited hours with the space, shut it down after season's over, and just kind of capitalize more on this short season we have. I just want to continue to help improve the town, make it a better place. Obviously, this is my livelihood, so I care about it, and everything matters. The seat in every restaurant you guys work with has a number on it, and it's a number that affects not only the employees, but the owners, and then trickle down with everybody above. So, no seating, if someone could just lean on something, that's fine. With my proposal today of no additional seats and absorbing the 102 gallons, we're still within the same design flow we had on the plans. The plans haven't changed, we're not adding to it.
I'd like to see what the changes that you're talking about tonight in writing before I personally agree to it. I think it's a wonderful facility, but I think there's been some changes in what was written, and I'd like to see that in print. I don't know if that's doable, it might put you behind, doesn't mean we have to wait till next meeting, but that's, Megan can help us with that, so that it might be something you can do with your lawyer within a week or something.
Yeah, we could do that.
And I would agree to it if you could agree to the composting toilet.
Okay, any questions from the audience? I'm gonna close the hearing, and we've had a discussion, and so, any thoughts from anybody for a recommendation, opposed, request,
You're
to
still at
continue the
13
hearing?
You're still at 13 seats. That's all I want to be on record to say. You're still at 13 seats, no matter what you do there, with a composting toilet, or a sunny day versus a rainy day, and you're asking for more square footage to operate a bigger operation on the same footprint. So I don't see any change in what you presented. And I don't want to get you wrong, you have a great business there. I don't know the numbers. I don't assume to tell you that that retail space could be used in another way to generate more money for yourselves. But my problem is that the board has gone over backwards. Your family's been terrific to the town. Your mother was here. We went from a dress shop to where you are today, which is a full bar restaurant, no public facilities. And I would make the recommendation that you invest the money in your kitchen and a public toilet, and keep the space that you have and value it better than you're valuing it, because it's very valuable. That's where I'm seeing. I see no no advance in your argument to grant it, and I'd love to grant it. But I come back to the same thing I said when I first met you on this topic, that the gallery across the street would love to have a restaurant there. And they don't, because they don't have the septic capacity. And we get requests all the time about people wanting to build out a restaurant in a small space that doesn't have the septic capacity. It's all about the septic capacity. And to Larry's point, at some point, you're gonna have a sewerage capacity that you may be able to make this case and win it, and say, I want a two-story bar there with 50 seats, because I think it's a vital interest to the town. And I would be supportive of listening to something along those lines, but right now, I'm still coming back to the hard number of 13 seats in that space, operating on 33 seats, asking for more capacity.
And my suggestion I already made about seeing the changes from what's in writing that we have till tonight in writing, including more information on the water capacity. Any changes? Otherwise, I feel like I have to abstain.
I agree with what Frank says.
Yeah.
No further questions.
So I'm not quite sure where we're at.
I think we need a continuation, don't we?
We could put it to a vote, or we could continue it, or you could continue it.
Yeah, we'd like to come back next month with the plan that'll incorporate Megan's suggestions and see what the board does.
Because we're all about water use, that's the bottom line. And water use,
You know,
I couldn't care if you have
you know,
300 seats, it's the water use where
It's a coffee shop.
yeah.
A lot of the water walks out the door.
Uh-huh,
So,
but some
Yeah.
of it doesn't.
well, no, that's true. But you know, I mean, in reality, aside from the occasional patron who sneaks into the bathroom, and the water that goes down the sink in the kitchen, there's no water going into the ground. And I think that's actually self-evident, because if you have a septic system with a capacity of 482 gallons a day, and you're pouring 800 gallons a day into it, a failure would have occurred long before now. So I understand, I'm not disputing any of the numbers or the concerns. I'm just saying that the reality of the water going into the septic system is a great deal lower than the gallons per day that's being used at the coffee shop and bar. But who drinks water in a bar? Somebody who's not Irish,
All
right?
do, except that you put stuff in it.
Oh, that's right, we put ice cubes in our drinks, that's right, I forgot. But if you, I mean, I hope you can agree with that concept, Frank, that a lot of the water is going out the door in coffee cups.
Or with my hose in the garden.
Well, it's a great garden, but he sells a lot of coffee. And so, the
There's no public restroom there right now, and we're talking about putting a public restroom there. So wouldn't the gallons per usage go up with a public restroom?
Well,
For the
no,
patrons?
the usage wouldn't go up necessarily. If you use a standard toilet,
So
obviously,
everybody that's at the,
if you use a standard toilet, more water would go into the system, the septic system.
right,
And of course, that's one reason why Megan suggested a composting toilet. Or some self-contained unit that doesn't use our water system. So we'll come back with a proposal,
come back.
yeah.
I would suggest, if you're interested in that system, there's an excellent composting toilet facility at the Wellfleet Audubon. And if you ever get up that way, you might want to take a look at it and see how it works.
Well, actually, about 20 years ago, I actually built a house on spec in South Chatham, and we had limitations on the lot, and so we used composting toilets in the house and sold it on the
I
market.
think we need a motion
So,
for continuation.
hearing
Yep.
Yep. I second it.
All in agreement?
Aye.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have something much better than, is it chewy? No, chewy minutes. Good for you.
Okay, the next item on your agenda is new business, a public hearing to solicit public comment on the proposed creation of fees for new license and permit types. These types include licensed utility installers and sewer connection permits. Last month, we discussed these two types of permits and fees, and this is the public hearing. Needed to be advertised in the local paper for 2 weeks in order to make an official vote.
I opened the public hearing. Any comments from the audience? Hearing none, I close the public hearing and go on to the discussion with the board.
So there's two different fees to discuss and vote on. Two separate votes are required. The first is the licensed utility installer. We discussed a fee of $125 per year. That is the same fee we charge licensed installers and inspectors. So we chose that number to keep in line with our other professional services. Second, oh, go
I'd like
ahead.
to make a motion that we accept that.
Okay.
Yep, I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed.
The second
one,
fee you have before you is the sewer connection permit fee. This is the permit that an installer would pull to connect from the town pipe to the house, and it would include the abandonment of the existing septic system. It was a suggestion from the town administrator to charge $0 for this permit. A short analysis done by me, a salary study, how much time we spend reviewing permits, doing inspections, doing all the paperwork with current salaries, comes to $63 per permit. So that is a cost that would be absorbed by the department should you choose to not charge a fee.
I move that we not charge a fee for that service.
Second?
What's that?
Okay,
Do we want to second that?
Yeah,
no fee, no charge.
yeah, that's the,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
talked about last month.
yeah, I'll second
Okay.
that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And can we have a clause in there that we revisit it in case, well, let's say within a X number of, let's say 2 years or a year, whatever, is you find that it is more than that, we come back and revisit
Sure,
fee.
we usually look at our fees once a year
Okay.
anyway to make sure
So
they're
that covers that. Okay.
covered, or the services.
Okay.
Okay. Passed, all unanimous. Okay,
The next item is a hearing for Walsh for 9 Fiddler's Landing to reconsider an order of conditions granted August 12th, 1997. There is to be no expansion of the dwelling beyond the existing floor plan or square footage. Proposal is to renovate the existing finished basement by adding 345 square feet of livable space to the existing basement. No additional bedrooms are proposed.
now open the hearing.
Hi, good evening. Rob McPhee here this evening for the Walsh family. They purchased 9 Fiddler's Landing about a year ago, and we've worked with them for some design and construction services at the house over the past year. When they purchased that house, the basement was partially finished, sections of it down there. And part of the process here is they would like to redo that spot, but relay out the area to make it more conducive to to better use of it. So we've put together a plan for some proposed changes to it, and have brought before you this evening because of the previous variance that had been issued, not allowing any increase in habitable space to that house without your approval. So there's no increase in bedroom count or anything as that such, just an increase in square footage in that basement. And happy to answer any questions on the plans or anything else you have.
What would you do, not you, what does your client propose to have down there? If not sleeping, like laundry? or
Playroom,
what?
they have
Oh,
kids,
Okay.
you know, so TV, electronics, iPads, iPhones, all the social media items, they all seem to be on these days. It's a place for them to go.
You have adequate, I have to
Yeah.
look at this again, but adequate exit?
Yes.
Especially if children are involved?
Yeah, there's a direct access right outside from the
Okay.
area.
Recommendations from the health director?
You have the floor plan in your packet. It's one of the bigger ones, I think. That's okay. That's all right. It's easier to read. So what they're proposing is the finished basement part in the back. That's not finished. I think, if I remember correctly, the parts near the lower stairs are already finished.
Right, let's see,
Making it a little bigger.
the existing, yeah, do you have the existing plan also, Megan? I have it, I'm happy to pass it around if you'd like, but I can walk you through it also. You go down the staircase and you're in the finished area on each side.
It's got dashed lines where the old walls were. So what they're proposing is to have one large open finished space without separate private rooms, and a half bath in the basement.
Right.
In 1997, a new septic system was installed, which required some setback variances to the wetland. This property is located on Allen's Harbor, and the septic system needed a setback distance to the top of the bank. When those were granted in 97, one of the conditions was no alteration to the dwelling. I recommend approval of this reconsideration with the conditions that the dwelling's restricted to 4 bedrooms, which are currently there. No increase in square footage or habitable space beyond what they are requesting now without further review by the board. The room in the basement shall not be used for sleeping purposes, and the floor plan and approval shall be recorded with the property to run at the Registry of Deeds.
I do not see the connection between sleeping space and water use. For example, you folks have children, or your clients have children. Children grow up, they become teenagers, they have parties. The parties occur in the finished basement. They include beer, they include McDonald's, they include all kinds of things. You have a new toilet down there now, and people are going to use it. To me, that's the issue, not how many bedrooms there are. You know, and I don't think the board has ever really come to any conclusion about that issue. I think you talked about it with a different basement last
Not what we're gonna
2 or
discuss.
3 meetings ago.
Actually, we're gonna have a discussion
Yeah,
tonight on that, just what you're talking about.
yes, that's what I think is the issue, really. Just because something doesn't have a bed doesn't mean it won't use water, is essentially what I'm asking. How do you know what's going to happen in the future?
Do we have their water, do we have your water
It's gonna happen
data?
tomorrow, no.
Your
No,
current
no,
water
I don't
data?
have it. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're mentioning. I mean, it's a common comment I hear from clients for a long time. They come and they think, geez, I could have 5 bathrooms in a 2-bedroom house just for the convenience. But the bathrooms are where the water is coming from. My understanding, and you can speak to it better than I can, but Title V, is it? You know, and the Board of Health regulations that we deal with in all these towns across the Cape and I'm sure the state, look at it as a bedroom count, and it's looked at it as 2 people, 2 occupants, full-time in a bedroom. And you could have one bathroom in a
Just
5-bedroom
consistent-
house.
It's just a consistent way across the board.
Right, right. So if you had a 5-bedroom house with one bath,
Variances, we'll have to have a conversation about every single square foot of a house.
right.
How many people could that hold? Are they popular?
And it's just
I
a
mean,
toilet,
it-
right?
it-
Right.
It
Yeah, no
all
shower.
drives to bedrooms
No
because
shower.
it's a consistent.
It all what?
It all drives to bedrooms because it's a consistent count across the board, whether the house is in East Harwich or Allen Harbor
Yeah.
or West Harwich.
Well, I understand it's a convenience, but is it practical?
It's practical.
Is it something that actually conforms to the actual use of the property?
It does, because you merge the margins across the board. Some grandmother has a 5-bedroom house, she uses one bathroom, one bedroom, one person, you know, when you merge it all together. and you
There's
step
no
away from
shower,
it, the only way to quantitate it is with a bedroom count and 2 people per bedroom.
Right,
Would it-
right.
would
And it goes right to the nitrogen flow.
Would it be good for us to have some data on their current water usage, particularly since it is on
It's
the water?
Well, it's the nitrogen flow, not the water we're really concerned about.
Yeah,
And I don't think we'd be able to help you with the water usage because they bought the house and haven't really lived there yet. They used it a little bit over the summer.
Oh,
But they've had it for a year, and we went right in after they closed on it and started to do renovations, you know, phase by phase. And so they really haven't lived there.
Haven't, yeah.
And even with that said, it's a seasonal home. As I think you probably find so many of the homes that are here in town, they're
Absolutely.
summer, they're heavy in the summer, and they're pretty much vacant, you know, sometime in the fall through the spring, early summer. So
What
it's,
we're concerned about is does the renovation lead way to having a separate auxiliary apartment like we're talking about? Is there a full bathroom, a full shower?
Right.
There's a small room with a little door and a bigger room, and now it's a whole nother bedroom. But to finish off a basement, especially where you're doing it with open rooms.
Right, it's
making it
wide
one
open.
room bigger.
it's a wide open space now with a staircase coming down from the first floor. There's a half bath that they want to put down there so that people don't have to go up and down.
I think we're picking on them to judge how the room is used.
Well, it's a generic question, because they're not the only people that have made this kind of request, and I would like to sort of,
Well, I think that's
Get
a
my own
discussion we
mind
need to
relaxed.
discuss we have it on the agenda to discuss what you're talking about.
on today's agenda?
Yeah.
Oh,
so we shouldn't penalize them because they happen to be,
Save it for the next one,
Yeah.
right?
let's just say, they happen to be the case that's before us.
I don't think there's,
But you have a good point, is that we've known
Yeah.
in the past that people who we thought or presented were just gonna have a innocent room like a, family room.
Primer.
Then, sometime down the road, made it to a bedroom or added a shower, et cetera, or a back door, so they could have, it's almost like a separate apartment, like you're saying.
yeah.
I make a
Moving
motion,
on.
we accept this.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussions. Good luck with the later on discussion.
No, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah.
The next hearing we have is Oceanside Property Investments LLC at 540 Route 28 to consider a variance request to install a new Title V septic system prepared by Moran Engineering Associates LLC. Variances from 310 CMR 15 to 211 minimum setbacks. To allow a proposed septic tank to be 6 feet from the crawl space foundation where 10 feet is required, variance of 4 feet. To allow a proposed septic tank to be 7 feet from the water line where 10 feet is required, variance request of 3 feet. Note, the new water line has been sleeved in December of last year. And last variance is to allow the septic system to be located beyond the property line pursuant to an easement. There is an existing easement recorded at the Registry of Deeds from, I believe, the 50s. However, there was never an official variance request from the town.
Okay, we open the hearing.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering, here for the property owner and the people looking to run the retail business in there. This is the Monahan Jewelry Building. A septic inspection was done, which is what started this process. The septic was actually in fairly good shape. The leaching area was in great shape. The bathroom for the property is extremely small, so the use has always been extremely small use. Just the workers would use this small bathroom. But in the current people are doing, the proposal is to do retail as well, with which makes for a very small flow of 74 gallons a day. But the issue, there were three issues that came up. One was the easement issue, and we did do the research, and there has, since the 40s, there's been a easement for, at one point, this property and the property behind were the same owner. When it was sold off, it wasn't surveyed back in whenever whether that was in the 40s or a little after that. But actually, part of the building itself is not on the property, or it's in a use easement. So the septic, but plus the back of the building, if you look at the plan, is actually not on the property. I guess that was known when it was sold, because that was also, maybe it was the deed after the first deed was written in as that gave the owner, that gave an all-encompassing, gave an easement for the building and the septic system and the parking to the owner of 540 for the benefit of 540 from 538. So, but getting back to it, the problem at the septic inspection was that the water line was too close. So that was taken care of. The water department last month dug that up and sleeved it, put the water line inside of a continuous sleeve, which is generally what they do in situations like this, because there's no way to get the water line due to the other utilities and how tight it is to the bank property. There's no way to get the water line 10 feet away, but they were able to get it 7 feet away. The easement issue, like I said, was recorded, and a copy of that was given to the health department. And then the next issue was, as far as we could tell, it's not rated to be parked on. It's been under a parking lot since it was installed, and it's actually rather close to the surface. We saw no issue, but it is not the it's not the H20 components, or at least H20 tank that should be under the parking lot. So the proposal before you is to take out the existing 1,000-gallon tank and put in a current tank to code, which would be a 1,500-gallon 2-compartment, which should make the leach pit last for, if it's the same use as before, which is retail, then it should last until a sewer comes, even if it's 50 years down the road, because the existing system only showed maybe 1 inch that the water had ever come up the sidewall of the leach pit. So what we're asking, or what the owner is requesting to do, is to replace the tank with one that can be driven on, or parked on, as it has been, but this at least will meet code. So with that, I will end my discussion. I think I went on longer than needed to.
I move the approval.
Excuse me, can we have the recommendations of the director?
Well, I've read them, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The proposed plan is, provides maximum feasible compliance, and it's an improvement over what's there already. I recommend the approval of the variances with the conditions that the building is to be restricted to the uses with wastewater flows of 300 gallons per day or less, which is what the septic system is designed for. no increase in square footage or habitable space. The variances and conditions are to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and no garbage disposal. That, I don't think that could be possible, but those are my recommendations.
Move the approval of the report.
Can I close the hearing? Okay, motion, you move, okay, second?
Cynthia, I will move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passed. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not leaving yet.
Yeah, he's got one more. The next hearing is for Wang, 4 Quaston Lane, to consider a variance request to install a new Title V septic system prepared by Moran Engineering Associates LLC. 2 variances are requested from minimum setback distances to Title V to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be 6 feet from the property line where 10 is required, variance of 4 feet, and to allow a proposed soil absorption system to be 16 feet from the cellar wall where 20 is required, variance request of 4 feet.
Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. This is, there's actually a Title V system in the ground. This is, a new person bought the property, Andrew Wang, and he's proposing to raise and rebuild, but in the same footprint, at least on that north side. So the issue, there is a Title V, but the problem with that Title V that's in the ground is that at the time, which maybe the late 80s, early 90s, the measurement to a wetland resource was taken from actual water and not from what is now considered the wetland resource, which is the beach and the coastal bank. So when you look at that, it's the leach pit itself is only 40 feet from the coastal bank. The area to get it 100 feet from the coastal bank and floodplain is on the north side of the house. The north side of the house is it's owned by this number 4 Quaston Lane. It is an easement to a right-of-way easement, so there's a driveway going across it to number 2 Quaston Lane, which is shown on the west side of the plan. They abut Pine Street also, but their driveway comes across the north side of the property. They have a written right-of-way easement. So the idea would be to put again, a traffic loading system under the right-of-way, return the right-of-way back to its pre-construction condition. The new building would maintain the footprint on the north side, basically all the way around, but on that north side of the existing building. The foundation would be pulled back. Right now, the existing foundation on the northwest side is a full foundation. It would be 12 feet. If we were to put this in for the existing house, we would need a variance to 12 feet. The architect and the owner are requesting that to be able to get some type of variance for the new, to improve the situation, but still for the stairway down to go to 16 feet. So there is an improvement. Either way, we would deed the setback variance to the north lot line by just putting any system in for the existing or the proposed house. The floor plans have also been submitted. The existing house is 6-bedroom. It's 5, and then a separate living quarters. And they're proposing, what's proposed is a 4-bedroom separate living quarters, but the proposal has a exercise room attached to the main room. So the decision was made just to design it to 6 bedrooms as is existing and not go for a 5 with some type of deed restriction, because that exercise room could be considered a bedroom, but we're matching, so we're matching the existing flow. The basement is not finished. The setback from the wetland resource is largely improved, and the setback to the full basement is improved by 4 feet. So that's a proposal, so I'll ask for questions.
I did open the meeting, though I didn't say it.
In your
Um,
mind.
Recommendations of the director?
The current system is only 40 feet from the coastal bank. Should this system be installed as proposed, even without the raise and replace, the demo and rebuild, these variances would be required even at that time. So they are giving up a bedroom, going from a total of 6 to a total of 5, 4 in the main house and 1 in the guest house. I do recommend approval of the variances with the condition to restrict the property to 5 bedrooms per plan stated 12/27/18 by Sandbox Design Studio, LLC. No increase in square footage or habitable space without further review by the Board of Health. No garbage disposal, and the variances and conditions to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Close the hearing, discussion? Yes, oh, in public, yes?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm Attorney Sarah Germano Flores. I do represent the abutter who utilizes the easement, and I did call Attorney Kroll, who represents the Lang earlier today, just
What's
to
the address of
let
the
him
abutter?
know. We're at 2 Clausen
2.
Lane.
Thank you.
And we have this right of way where the leaching component will be, and the septic tank will be located. And I'm not an RS, and we only just got these plans yesterday, so we just want to confirm, and then I'm looking at the profile, it certainly looks like these are all subsurface components, so they're not going to interfere with the traveled way, but we do want to make sure that's unfettered. Even the 4-inch dome charcoal vent appears on the site plan view to be located outside the 12-foot wide right-of-way, so that's good. I just want to make sure with the engineer that that's correct, but also that, you know, these components are rated so that there's sufficient loading capacity for vehicles to be traversing over them. You know, this is their sole right-of-way. They don't have access off Pine Street. This is their deeded access. It's in their deed, so it's the cars will be coming over here if there's any heavy trucks, repair trucks, you know, oil delivery kind of trucks. It'll need to be fairly heavy, will need to sustain these components. Will need to sustain traffic over them. So if someone could assure us of that, and/or put a condition that they're devised and designed to accept those loading requirements. And then secondarily, when they're being installed, if there's a time of year limitation, so that it's not disruptive of their access while they're there during the summer months.
They're there during only the summer months?
Right,
Okay.
right. So those are two conditions that we'd like you to consider.
Is that way paved?
It's not, it's gravel, and if we'd had more time, I might have been able to answer these questions with consulting an RS on my own, but, you know, it seems to be proposed to be put back as a gravel way. So is that okay? Is that going to be enough to support vehicular use over, we don't want to damage the components, obviously, but we need it to still work as a right-of-way for us.
I think that the components are designed to be driven on. They are the same ones that the vehicles will be driving on, and the catch basins and stuff coming down the road. I know that it's a H20 is a 20-ton, and then it's 80% in the back. I think it ends up being 16,000 pounds of wheel. If a vehicle is legal on the roads, then these are the components to be used under it. So if someone's driving a legal vehicle, nothing we can do about that.
One would hope.
One would hope. The owner, but I think the point is well taken, and if the owner, certainly, the owner of the Locust property, if there's an issue with number two's travel through the property, I think that certainly is, our owner has been warned by his lawyer that it's certainly not number two Quasin Lane's issue if something on theirs damages a component of this. You know, that would have been a poor installation, and our client would be the one responsible for fixing it.
Yeah.
And I know Attorney Kroll was gonna talk to him about that as well, so he's warned that, and it is to be put back, and I know, I did hear back from Attorney Kroll, and he had, said that the new buyer, Andrew Wang, had agreed to, all the requests you had made of Attorney Kroll and the time of year, and, Zoning Board of Appeals, which this project has to go through, normally would put a time of year from July through Labor Day, which makes sense, because you got people that have expensive properties and only use them for 8 weeks a year don't want, you know, outside construction go on their limited
So if there
time.
could be a consistent one relative to installation of this, I think that would alleviate the concern about having the access disrupted during the summer months.
So is that an illegal document that says if the number two somehow damaged with the trucks coming in and/or the time of year would be an illegal document?
No.
I think it's legal, just that they've been notified, our client has been notified, but this is the material that's used under driving areas, so I don't see any issue. If there was an issue, the install would have not compacted under the components properly, which should be my issue, because I gotta sign off on it once it goes in the ground, both myself and the health department have to look at it, but it's seeing
is their agreement about timing beyond it's not our business. That's a legal agreement
That's why I
between the
asked.
two of you, not us.
That's why I
Not
asked.
time.
Time of year limitations, permitting, I think the liability thing's outside your purview, but certainly the time of year limitation condition on a permit request is in the ordinary course of most permitting boards.
We've never granted
We've never
anything like that, but.
had that, but if you could have an agreement with him, and if he breaches it, it's a civil problem, should involve us.
Well, okay, so I was requesting that the condition be placed, that there be a time of year limitation on the installation to avoid the summer months.
Okay,
That was my first request, and then
Yep,
the second,
I got that.
the design, be designed to ensure legal vehicular passage across, that these components are sufficient.
Yeah,
And I think there are Title V standards that address
yeah,
those weight requirements, so.
This plan meets those.
and this plan meets those. So it's the timing request that's before us to vote on.
Well, that's what, yeah.
That you
Right.
can consider, right?
Dan, in this plan, is the property labeled number 12, the one we're talking about?
No, that's to the north. Ours is to the west.
To the
It
west?
would be the other one closer to the water and
Okay.
towards the bottom. Your number 12 is right on Quasin Lane. What's interesting is number 2, so number 2 is actually on Pine, but I guess their legal access is Quasin Lane,
That's what I was
but it's to
puzzled
north of number 4. It is a little confusing.
Okay.
Did you have a question? Yes.
No, just.
No, no.
You're
which
the
house
attorney
is
first.
this
Not you.
about?
Are you saying that the construction cannot be done in the summertime?
That's what the request is, and Zoning Board of Appeals,
July to,
July to Labor Day.
they cannot work on the property.
They can't work on the outside.
They could work on the
They could work
inside.
inside. Is correct. That's the request. I mean, the request right now is that the septic isn't done during that period.
Right.
Generally, when you get the zoning board of appeals, they're gonna say any,
In other
all
words, they don't want
outside
anybody
work.
with big trucks around here in the summertime.
Correct.
Access to the beach is most important.
Yeah, and
That's
compressors
not
going.
what we're concerned about here, that's a zoning issue. What we're concerned about here is that the access isn't disrupted, because this solely relates to the septic system.
Oh, okay, so-
installation. So it would just be consistent with what the zoning board is already gonna invoke.
Okay.
We would have not, the owner, my client, has no issue with putting that in the order if you would like, but I do understand that having the access disrupted for 3 days on a, if you're only down on a, 1 or 2 weeks a year is a problem. So we don't have an issue if you do want to write that in, with not to be worked on at that, or constructed at that period of time.
Thank you.
And are you satisfied with the weight,
Yeah.
without it being in the conditions because of the the requirements of?
Right, I think if Megan confirmed and the engineer confirmed that these components satisfy the Title V weight requirements.
Okay.
You know, they have those, and that's what these, and
Okay.
I'm satisfied with this. That doesn't
Okay.
need to be a condition.
Okay. Okay. So do I hear a motion?
Sure, I'll move the recommendation of the health director be approved.
With the addition of,
With the
And, yeah,
addition
I was
of-
gonna say,
with the
with
addition of
the
the
addition of the timeline here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was in your recommendation.
No, that's new tonight.
Okay.
So how would the recommendation go then?
It would read that one of the conditions would be to not have construction of the septic system between July 1st and Labor Day. Does that work?
I accept the amendment.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you very, very
And
much.
I'm so sorry I didn't.
Thank you.
One time I didn't see it.
Oh, wondering who. Before we get too far, I think we should review the permit list, so we don't forget to vote on those. You have quite an extensive permit list in front of you. There's only one new permit in the food service category. It's a mobile food application called Mobile Mixers. They're looking to get the beach contract. They're looking to get the beach contract to be at Bang Street Beach and Red River Beach. Their business concept is to get packaged food from a local bakery that also does packaged sandwiches, not make anything on the food truck, and have iced coffee and fruit and kind of easy.
Sounds
I've
good.
inspected the truck. I don't see any issues with it.
Great.
Does it, since that would be the second food facility at Red River, does that take away parking
No, there's,
spaces? That is issue?
no, they're designated spaces.
Okay.
They're not parking spaces. They're designated already for food service.
Oh, okay.
Down on Bang Street Beach, there's a designated space near the bathhouse. And then on Red River Beach, also right next to the bathhouse, there's an outlined place that the food service trucks are able to park at.
Good, okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to pass the permits?
I'll make that motion that we accept the permits.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Unanimous.
Going back to our work session, we've all gotten away with some short meetings, so we're gonna have to stay for a little bit longer. We have a discussion to talk about guidelines for the review of requests to reconsider previous orders of conditions regarding a change in habitable space. So, in your packet, you should have gotten all of it, it's all on one page. In 2018, we had 7 requests for reconsiderations. That's up from the last 2 years. There were 3 each other year. I didn't break it down to how many were spatial variances versus close to wetland or watercourse. Tonight's reconsideration was an environmental variance. Last month, you had 2 that were in the campground areas, and it was a matter of space, they just didn't have enough room to put in a full-size septic system, so they were close to their neighbors, not impacting a wetland or stream, or the ocean, for that matter. So when you grant variances, it's never for new construction for an increase in flow. It's always to fix a failed septic system. It's never to build a new house. So when you look at a floor plan and you approve a variance, it's always maximum feasible compliance. Which means they're putting in the best system they can with what they have to work with. Variances are only issued as a last resort. They aren't, you as a board have been very consistent with that. You don't allow self-imposed variances. So if someone has a septic system they want to put an addition on, even if it's not a bedroom, it's never heard before the board because it's been a long-standing regulation policy not to hear those things. And I think that is helpful to achieve maximum feasible compliance. So over the years, a lot of variances have been granted over the last 20 years since Title V has been in place. And now we have people wanting to expand, whether it's going up a story or finishing a basement, and there's these conditions that are existing on their properties. So that's why you're seeing more and more reconsideration requests. People want to use their property as best they can, use what they have. So
You could say it's tied to the economy.
absolutely, yes, yeah.
And the number of real estate transactions have
Mhm.
picked up, and the valuations have grown.
And
Which is a good thing.
when we review building permits, we count bedrooms, we don't count square footage. Some houses come before us for new construction or alterations that have many, many rooms, whether they call them dens and libraries, studies, playrooms, rec rooms. And when a house has more than 10 rooms, Title V allows us to count all the rooms up and divide by 5, and that's what the septic system has to be designed for. But when a site has a variance on it with a condition that already exists, we don't review it, you guys do, because the reconsideration requests are discretionary, really. The reason.
We're hedging against adding bedrooms,
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah. The reconsideration is, I've heard a lot over the last year, what are you gonna use this space for? Is this gonna be an apartment? Is this gonna be a bedroom? And you're right. If you're gonna finish your basement, you're gonna have more people there. But we as a town can't tell people how they can use their house. So just think about that when you do reconsideration requests. But I think Pam's point was, to get this on the next meeting, was should there be a standard?
Well, you're all dealing, I understand what you're saying, and what we're dealing with is what in medical research we call proxies. There's a proxy for the real tiger in the room, which is flow of wastewater. Now, I don't know anything about it, but I would like to think that there might be a way of measuring the flow of wastewater, rather than guessing at it by trying to figure out who's going to use which rooms for what. Wastewater generally travels through a single pipe. If not, 2 pipes. If there were, and I'm just saying I don't know, but I can look into it, if there were a way of inexpensively and with little or no personnel involvement, measuring the wastewater flow in any septic system that's requesting a change from the standards, it would be a simple way of avoiding all this guesswork. And I was thinking, why not put a metering device, inexpensive metering device, into the wastewater flow itself, which would be digital and could be connected to either by radio or by wire to network, so that it would not involve personal inspection, to measure anytime anybody requests a variance, just tell them, install a meter. And I don't know that they exist, and I don't know how much they cost, but if you're interested, I think we should consider it.
Is that feasible?
They, once the sewers are installed, there'll be a sewer meter.
Yeah, but then that's not our interest now. Our interest is septic systems, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So a water meter determines how much water they use. The only water that doesn't go down the drain would be your irrigation
Yeah.
system. So you could figure out a house that doesn't have an irrigation system and get their water usage from the water department and figure out how many gallons per day the system's being used for. You could do that under what's currently in.
Yeah, but what you don't know is how often they use the irrigation system.
Well, if they don't have one, or if they have an irrigation well,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it wouldn't be included in the meter.
Well, it's just a thought.
That's interesting, and would that be part of the, some application? So that somebody, and I don't think it needs to be the Board of Health, but maybe the applicant contacts the water department to get that information, because if it already exists, then we making judgments on the status of a variance need to know that as part of our decision-making.
I'm not sure if it's useful information, only because water use would be based on a current use, and if they're asking to increase their square footage, we wouldn't know what their flow would be until after we had already granted the variance.
Oh,
And
yeah,
all,
I see your point.
and also, the variance requests we see, for reconsideration requests we see, are, I would say, 90% new owners. And you don't know how they're gonna use their facility.
In other words, what you're saying is if the measurements would be in retrospect.
It's a
rather than
snapshot in time,
prospect.
right?
It might be worth, since we're gonna have a more in-depth discussion, if, I'm not putting it on you, but discussing this with the water department, see if they have any ideas, because even though it's new people, we would have the current data, and if the variance is not gonna involve extra bedroom space, it may not involve more water, so it would have at least a better, more objective way to look at the variance application.
I think the point where we're most concerned with nitrogen loading, and to go beyond that, to infringe upon the property owners, increasing the value of their property, upgrading it, rebuilding it, I think we're overstepping ourselves. Where our directive is nitrogen loading based on bedrooms, I don't think we have to go any further than that, because the majority of the people here are retired, a second home, and I don't see it evolving into much more than that. We have this sewerage component coming towards it, and it's complicated enough to review every one of these requests. Then putting the homeowner on the defensive, measuring their water flow, when all we really care about is bedroom count. And it's pretty easy to determine, and a pretty easy negotiation with the owners to see it from our perspective. You know, if it looks like an apartment being built onto the adjacent house, it's an apartment, and if it's open space, are the doorways are wide enough, is what we've been, used in the past. I think it's good enough, to
And why
tell
would
you
it,
the
why
truth.
would it only be bedrooms? Wouldn't it be in combination if they're adding bathrooms,
It's too hard to-
toilets?
It's too hard to quantify. You
Oh.
could, there's no, law about how many toilets you can have in a house.
Mm.
And the thinking is that if it's a two-bedroom house, how many people are gonna live in that two-bedroom house? If it had 3 bathrooms, who cares?
Thinking more about your objection, which is a good one, what would it do if we were to grant a provisional approval based on flow? Such as, let's say we put in some monitors in a few houses and monitored the flow, so we get an idea. 3 bedrooms, X gallons. 10 bedrooms, X gallons. Get a rough estimate of how much water is actually pumped into the sewage system. And then, once you have a reasonably good idea of what the normal would be, to say, okay, we'll grant your variance if you don't exceed X gallons per day, which would mean that the homeowner himself would be monitoring his own water flow. And that would not put any onus on the employees, provided that there were also some kind of mechanism for verifying the water.
How would that work, though? If you give them provisional and they go ahead and make the change to their house,
Can't do that.
the activity's
Well, no,
already
but-
happened, so I know what you're getting at.
The independent variable is the flow.
Yeah.
That's the only thing the owner can
But how do you go
control.
backwards on it?
Yeah. Frank, what I meant more in the properties of the wetlands or near the sound. Those were specifically my concerns,
Mhm.
not just any
Yeah,
variance.
I mean, yeah, close to the water, they wanna put on a second story, they're reconfiguring the house. I just don't think it's right to infringe upon the property owner's rights, spend more money to renovate their house, and to not let them do that. I don't feel right about it.
Plus, it might encourage them to move. So, I mean, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
I mean,
Right.
I think that it, you're gonna have, there's a benefit to them coming in and renovating a house and using less fossil fuels to heat it, putting in new windows, new insulation. Typically, there's an upgrade in some respect to the Title V when they're doing it, because they have a wide open page. They knock a few, typically, they knock a few variances off a list. Or they're willing to give up a bedroom, like these last people in Quonset. And I think if we're just diligent and consistent about how we have been, that the bump that we've seen is based on the economy, and that changes. I think 10 years from now, the economy's gonna be different than it is right now. And that the requests for variances won't be there. And you're gonna come to a level where it's gonna be built out. There's gonna be no place to go, because there's so many other hurdles between the Conservation Committee, the building regulations, and zoning. That we should be careful not to stop the development of people's property rights if it's within reason, and it speaks to the ability of us keeping a cap on the bedroom count. And to expand it beyond that, I think is too much work for these folks and us to have to dial down on every single person's request to renovate their house and put it through a matrix
Well,
of
it's not,
of
it's the ones that,
formulations.
like I said, that are environmental.
Can we
Right, but
continue this
you gotta be-
discussion?
You've got to be fair across the board.
Because I think there's a lot to think about, and I don't know, but maybe Megan would or whatever, what those other committees that you mentioned, conservation and what else, are they also discussing these issues? So it'd be interesting for us to have a little more time to think about this, because I think I'm a little bit brain dead right now, having this as the last topic of discussion. And it would be interesting to find out if some of the other committees, or departments, I should say, in town are also thinking about this, so that if they are, it might be good to have them come in or us to have a meeting with them at some point.
Well, they typically come to us before they
Yeah.
go to them.
Right, but to simplify it, I think is a good point, without being punitive. So if you ask me for a vote, right now, I don't know enough that I could objectively and transparently make a decision.
I would suggest that if we're going to have a common agreement on this, that we should establish a protocol for the committee, so that we don't get into this business of, well, this person's adding a basement but not a bedroom, therefore we don't have to consider additional flow. I think if we're gonna use that technique, that criterion, that proxy, then we ought to say so in writing as part of our committees, so that the future members, like our friend Dr. Davialo, will understand that it's a simple formula. Number of bedrooms equals amount of flow, period, no matter how many basements they have.
Yeah, well, plus the applicants will see it more clearly, and we're treating
Yeah.
everybody equally.
Yeah, I
But
don't
at full
think
circle, that's how we do it.
I don't think it's a scientific way of dealing with it, but if it's the wish of the committee, I think we ought to be consistent, that's all.
But that is exactly how we do it now.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
had
it isn't, because the
No,
other
it isn't.
day
I don't
we
think
had
so.
somebody trying to establish a variance based on a finished basement with no toilet. And we said, well, you know, that might increase the flow. I'm
No,
sorry,
no.
no, it wasn't with no toilet, it was with a toilet but no additional bedroom.
Right.
And then they had
Right.
an outdoor, so I think there
Yeah.
has been a number of cases where we've had to go, like however many months ago that was, the people who were adding a half bath and having a big finished basement,
Yeah.
and then they had a shower outside, so the whole concept of, was this really gonna be like an in-law or a nanny place? And I agree with you too, that we shouldn't be, every single little item, we should approve, but there needs to be something consistent for the homeowner, so they know what we're looking for, and for us,
Yeah.
particularly as we get new members.
Either stick to the housing, to the bedroom count, or make some other arrangement for estimating flow. But I don't think we should do both. I think we should be either or. And if Frank thinks that this is the best way of doing it, we should vote on that.
Well, just say, it's the way they already do it. They look at bedroom counts, and all we're doing is giving them the ability to either reconfigure the house, keep the bedroom count, or finish a basement. And as long as it's not a basement that looks like a bedroom,
Well,
I
it's
don't
all-
have a
It's
problem
all
saying yes to
subjective.
it.
You're getting into subjectivity there rather than counts. And, go ahead.
Yeah.
Question, what are other towns doing, Megan? I mean, we're Harwich.
Mhm.
We're are we all consistent counting bedrooms?
As far as I know, we are consistent with Dennis, Yarmouth, and Chatham. I do know that Brewster has a more strict definition of a bedroom. I think that they count all the rooms and divide by half every time. And it usually ends up with a bit of a higher bedroom number. But as far as variances go, I did work in Dennis for quite a while, and whenever anyone asked for any type of variance for an increase in square footage, they almost always added alternative technology if it was near an environmental resource. As a compromise, I would say, to allow the increase to happen with the septic system as is, they would approve it with alternative technology.
That's better, but it's still not very scientific, because near is not a scientific term.
Well, within the setback distance of the
I
resource.
know,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I'm not trying to be a nitpicker.
Well, we can table this if you want.
I would, and then maybe your point, excuse me, of what are other, I'm not saying we have to survey the whole Cape,
No,
but what are some other local towns doing, so that maybe if we just need to
Tweak.
good word, tweak a little bit to be more objective, then we can do it, and if we don't, we don't.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to bring it up
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the next
yeah,
meeting.
yeah, thank you.
All right, well, we don't need a vote or anything right now.
No.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. Okay,
Before we go, you all were
Oh.
given a conflict of interest
Oh.
summary. I'm gonna pass
Oh, yeah.
this.
Not again.
Yes, it needs to be done on a 2-year cycle in 2019 and then again in 2021. So I'm gonna pass this along and sign next to your name and get it back to me.
Oh,
And-
you don't sign this form here?
You should sign that form too, but sign the one I'm giving you now. And then
Take the
I
board.
sent you all the link to
I just
take,
gave mine to Jennifer, I did mine today.
there's a link to take the online
Yep.
question and answer one.
Yep,
And then you'll get something that looks like this.
yeah.
Bring it to me, and I will keep it in the file here and make sure that the town clerk gets a copy as well.
Are we gonna do your report?
Sure, it's very short this month, well, for December with all the holidays. We welcome Dr. Dalgallo to our team. He was sworn in with the town clerk on the 20th, and we'll make sure you get your conflict of interest done. And
It's easy.
it's easy.
I love it, the fact if you don't get the right answer, you can go back and change.
Yeah, today's date is great.
Could I ask, the question that I brought up to you on the email today,
Mhm.
could we put that on the agenda for next meeting?
Sure, I mean, we
Maybe
can.
we shouldn't do it publicly, but I was asked on Saturday, when I was at the Democratic meeting, you guys listening? That there was a lot of excitement when Representative Peak talked about the amount of money that's gonna be coming to
I
the
wanna
Cape
keep this.
based on the short-term rental tax that just passed. And a number of people in the audience were questioning how it was gonna be monitored. So I guess my question it was, so a member of the audience, whose husband is a official in the town, not official, but on one of the committees, asked, they turned and said, oh, I bet it's gonna be Board of Health. So my question really is, and we can discuss this next time, is this under consideration and how would we handle it? And I think we could discuss that at the next meeting. I don't
Sure.
think we need to
Okay.
decide
Just count
now.
the number of bedrooms and divide by 2.
So you just want this back?
It's
I
kind
want
of
that back
complicated,
as
but it's
well-
very
as well
exciting
as
that
the,
there's all
the
this money
sheet
to
with
do
everyone's name on it.
opioids
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other kinds of services.
Want to finish signing that sheet
Yes.
going around and then,
that here, and you want this?
so you want that?
Go back there.
So I think that's,
Okay. Are we set?
oh, there's no, I did, oh, here we go.
Yeah, I'm pretty set.
I don't know if you
Don't
got.
you want these too?
Okay.
No, those are
No, we
for
need those
you.
for us to review.
Oh, you don't
Why
need
are we
this back
supposed to
signed?
sign it?
Sign.
No, I don't think this is signing.
Back page.
I think,
Okay.
Sign the back page of the
oh,
conflict
okay,
thing,
you're
yeah.
right, okay.
Oh, just the same, the
Even though I didn't have a chance to read it, we just got it.
Well, that's just an acknowledgement that you received it.
Oh, okay,
So you want that back, just the last page?
Just the last page with your signature on it.
okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Yay.
All right.